This happened a few months ago. I'm 34 and recently moved back to my hometown to help my aging parents. After work, I went to the local bowling alley to unwind, a place I'd visited countless times as a kid. It has this old-school vibe, flickering neon lights, and the smell of greasy fries. It felt familiar and comforting, even if it was often empty during the week. I thought it would be good for me. At first, it was just bowling and chatting with a couple of old friends. It was a normal Thursday night when I noticed something odd. I saw a pair of shoes in one of the lanes, right where they had a sign saying closed for repairs. I thought that was strange, but maybe someone had left them there. I approached the attendant to point it out. He simply shrugged, saying no one was there. I felt uneasy but shrugged it off. Maybe I was just seeing things. Weeks passed, and things grew weirder. Each time I showed up, those shoes were still there. They seemed to shift positions. I was sure they were turned slightly toward the lane, like they were waiting for something. Then one night, I heard laughter. It echoed through the nearly empty alley. I thought it was just my imagination. I told my friends, but they laughed it off. They probably thought I was stressed. But then it happened again. I was there, alone, and I heard that laughter clearer and louder. I froze, looking around. There was no one else in the place. I felt a shiver run down my back. I glanced toward the back wall, and for a split second, I thought I saw a shadow dart past. My heart started to race. I wanted to convince myself it was just flickering lights or a trick of the eye, but that uneasy feeling wouldn't go away. The next time I came, I brought a couple of friends along. I hoped they'd see what I was experiencing. We were bowling, and I kept glancing at those shoes. Suddenly, I heard it again, the laughter. This time, they heard it too. Their faces went pale. What the hell was that? One of them whispered. I tried to dismiss it. After all, it had to be a joke, right? But that laughter felt real. I could feel my heart pounding. I wanted to explain it away, but I could see my friends were as scared as I was. After that night, I left the alley feeling uncertain. I kept glancing back as I stepped outside. Just before I shut the door, I thought I heard a voice whisper, "Why don't you come back?" I turned around and stared at the empty lanes. I stood there, feeling cold. What was going on? Now, I still can't explain any of it. Those shoes are still there. I haven't gone back since. I worry about what they mean. I want to forget all the strange things I saw and heard, but deep down, I can't shake the feeling that something was wrong. What was really happening at that alley? I don't know, but I'm too scared to find out. The days turned into weeks, and life settled into a strange and uneasy routine. I kept myself busy with work and my parents. I tried to forget the bowling alley and the mystery of the shoes. But every time I drove past the place, I felt a knot in my stomach. Curiosity battled with fear, but I couldn't bring myself to go back. One evening, my friend Jeremy called. He wanted to go bowling, and my initial instinct was to say no. But hearing his enthusiasm, I hesitated. Maybe it would be different this time. Maybe I was overreacting. After some convincing, I agreed to meet him at the alley. I felt a mix of dread and anticipation as I drove over, the familiar flicker of neon lights greeting me. When I stepped inside, the atmosphere felt thick. It was quieter than I remembered. Jeremy was already by the lane, joking with a couple of other friends. I forced a smile, trying to ignore the uncomfortable feeling crawling up my spine. But when I looked toward the closed for repairs lane, my heart skipped a beat. The shoes were still there, eerily still. As we bowled, I found myself focusing more on those shoes than on the game. I could feel the laughter echoing in my mind. Then, without warning, the lights flickered, and a chill ran through the place. I glanced at my friends, their smiles faded. I wanted to assure them it was just a glitch, some random power issue. I couldn't find the words. That S when I heard it again from the back of the alley. A child's laughter filled the space. It didn't fade into the background like before, it hung there, breathy and mischievous. I turned to Jeremy and felt my hands tremble. "Did you hear that?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Yeah," he replied, eyes wide. "What the hell is going on?" We stepped away from the bowling lane, moving cautiously toward the direction of the sound. I felt compelled to investigate, even as my heartbeat quickened. The laughter continued, it sounded like it was coming closer. I felt the blood draining from my face. Jeremy started to back up, but curiosity got the better of me. As I pressed on, I noticed a small door beside the back wall. There had never been a door there before. I was sure of it. It looked old and worn, the paint peeling. Before I could stop myself, I grabbed the handle and pulled it open. The moment I did, a rush of cold air swept through, enveloping me. I hesitated, staring into the darkness beyond. Then my phone vibrated in my pocket. I pulled it out, ready to dismiss the urge to go inside. But when I glanced at the screen, my heart sank. It was a text from an unknown number. It read, "You shouldn't have opened that door." I froze, staring at the screen in disbelief. This wasn't a joke. I looked up, only to find Jeremy and the others staring at me with fright in their eyes. I turned back to the door, but it was already shutting on its own. A loud bang echoed through the alley, leaving us in a deafening silence. What had I just unleashed? I felt a racing pulse of fear. I knew in that moment that I couldn't walk away. Not anymore. What was behind that door? I stepped forward, my heart pounding in my chest. The darkness behind the door felt alive, somehow pulling me in. The laughter was louder now, more insistent, urging me to enter. My friends stood rooted behind me, their faces a mix of fear and confusion. "Maybe we should go," Jeremy suggested, his voice shaky. But the curiosity bubbling inside me wouldn't let go. I glanced back at them, searching for support. All I saw was panic. "I just need to look," I said, trying to convince myself as much as them. Before anyone could protest, I took a deep breath and stepped through the doorway. The space beyond was small, barely illuminated by a flickering bulb hanging from the ceiling. Dust motes danced in the air, and a rank odor tickled my nose. I could see stale cobwebs draping across the walls. It was a storage area, filled with old equipment, broken pins and scuffed balls, but there was something else, something unusual in the far corner. I hesitated, narrowing my eyes. That S when I saw it, a pair of shoes, just like the ones from the closed for repairs lane, but these were different. They seemed to shimmer in the dim light, glowing faintly as if they were alive. My breath caught in my throat. "Lisa, come on." Jeremy called from the threshold, his voice harsh against the quiet. "This isn't funny." I turned to tell him to be quiet, but when I looked back at the shoes, they had shifted. They stood upright now, facing me. My stomach twisted. "This is not happening," I whispered to myself. Suddenly, I felt a chill wrap around me. I turned again, and the door slammed shut. Panic surged through me. I stumbled back, pressing against the wall as I felt the temperature plummet. Then I heard it again, a child's laughter, echoing through the room, but this time it was different. It had a darker edge, almost mocking. I clenched my fists, trying to reconcile the thrill of discovery with the dread pooling in my stomach. I had to get out. Grabbing the doorknob, I twisted it with all my might, but it wouldn't budge. My heart raced. "Open!" I yelled, pounding on the door. My friends could hear me, but I could see their shadows moving, grappling with the handle from the outside. Then something caught my eye. There was a small mirror hanging on the wall, partially obscured by cobwebs. I approached it hesitantly, wiping the surface with my sleeve. I could see myself, but something else, too. Behind me, there was a figure, a child, standing in the shadows, watching me. I froze. It was the same child I heard laughing, but there was a sadness in his eyes that chilled me deeper than the air around us. He reached out a hand, as if inviting me closer. "Get away from her!" Jeremy shouted, his urgency snapping me back. The sound of the handle rattling grew louder as Jeremy and the others continued to pound on the door. But the child's smile twisted into a grin that sent a wave of terror through me. I knew I had to escape, but at that moment, I felt paralyzed. Then the lights flickered again, plunging me into darkness. I screamed as everything went silent. What had I just unleashed, and what was the child trying to show me? I held my breath, praying for the door to open, but I knew I had to find out what happened next. I blinked, my eyes straining to adjust to the darkness. The silence felt suffocating. All I could hear was the frantic pounding from the other side of the door, their voices blending into a muffled chaos. I couldn't let myself think about how scared I was. I needed to focus. The chill intensified, wrapping around my limbs like icy fingers. I turned back to the mirror, drawn by an invisible force. The child was still there, his expression shifting from sadness to something else, an eerie sort of expectation. I swallowed hard. "What do you want?" I whispered into the dimness. Suddenly, the laugh echoed again, but this time it was right next to me. My heart raced as I spun around, looking for the source. The shoes were gone. I felt a cold gust of wind whip through the room, sending shivers prickling down my spine. "Lisa." Jeremy's voice came again, more urgent now. "Can you hear me? Are you okay?" "I'm fine," I shouted back, forcing my voice to sound steadier than I felt. But was I lying? A sense of dread crawled up my back. Then, in the corner of my eye, I saw movement. A shadow shifted near the far wall, and I felt the urge to flee. I didn't want to confront whatever that was, but my curiosity was still clawing at me. I took a cautious step forward. As I moved closer, I felt the mirror calling to me. There was something about my reflection, it was off, warping at the edges. I reached out, feeling a magnetic pull. Suddenly, the lights flickered back on. The room surged with harsh fluorescent light, and I gasped. The child was closer now, almost standing next to me in the reflection, though I felt utterly alone. His eyes were wide, pleading. I stumbled backward, but there was no wall behind me. It felt like I was falling into the mirror instead. I braced myself, but then everything shattered in a loud, deafening crash. The glass of the mirror exploded in a million pieces, a beautiful chaos of glittering shards cascading to the floor. Amongst the debris, I spotted something glimmering, something small and silver. With frantic hands, I knelt and grasped it. It was a small key, intricately designed, cold against my palm. I had no idea what it would unlock, but the child's eyes seemed to fade into the darkness beyond the shards as if guiding me. "Lisa." Jeremy's voice resonated through the door again, and I felt the fire of urgency ignite within me. I had to get out, but something inside me whispered that the key held the answer. I jumped to my feet, feeling the weight of the key in my pocket. I shoved my shoulder against the door, and this time, it opened with a loud creak. It swung outward, revealing my friends, wide-eyed and terrified. "Get out," I urged, my voice shaking. "We need to leave," but I think I saw something before I could finish. The lights flickered again. The child's laughter filled the air, this time more menacing than before. I turned back, but there was nothing but the remnants of the mirror. My heart pounded as darkness swirled around us. "Lisa, what's happening?" Sarah cried, taking a step back. "I don't know," I shouted, panic rising. But I felt the key pressing against me, and behind that chaos, I knew there was something more to uncover. As the laughter grew louder, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were all in danger. What had I let in, and how long before it came for us? I blinked, adjusting to the frantic environment outside that door. Jeremy and Sarah were wide-eyed, their faces pale. I needed to get us out, but the laughter lingered in my mind, echoing like a sinister promise. "Why are you all just standing there?" I pressed, my heart racing. "We need to go, now." "Did you see him?" Jeremy asked, voice trembling. "What was that?" I shook my head. "I don't know. It sounded like a kid and then there was laughter, something isn't right. We can't stick around." We made our way out of the room, urgency propelling us down the dimly lit hallway. Shadows flickered around us, dancing with every uncertain step. I could still feel the key heavy in my pocket, its cold metal grounding me against the rising fear. As we hurried, I glanced back expecting to see remnants of the chaos I had left behind. But there was nothing. Just dilapidated walls and cold air. "We need to find a way out through the main entrance," I urged, leading the way. The main area of the bowling alley was eerily quiet. Stripped of cheers and laughter, it felt like a graveyard. "Where is everyone?" Sarah whispered, her voice a touch too loud. "I don't know," I replied, "but we should keep moving." Suddenly, the clattering sound of bowling pins echoed from the lanes. It pierced the silence, making me freeze in my tracks. "Did you hear that?" I said, my breath hitching. The others nodded, eyes wide. "Let's check it out," Jeremy suggested. "Where did that bravado come from?" I shot him a skeptical look. But before I could protest, he was already moving towards the sound. Against my better judgment, I followed. I just hoped whatever had stirred the dark didn't have its sights on us. We approached a pair of lanes, dimly lit by the flickering overhead lights. The pins were standing upright, untouched, as if some unseen force had just reset everything. My heart sank. "This is weird," I stammered. "What if it's just the machines?" Sarah said, trying to reason. But even the air felt charged. Then, the sound echoed again. The unmistakable laughter. It was louder this time, filling the air with a chilling resonance. My heart raced. That laughter didn't belong to anyone in our group. "Let's get out," I urged, taking a step back. But as I turned to run, something caught my eye, a reflection in the glass of the nearby trophy case. It was the child again, standing behind us, his expression twisted into a haunting grin. "Lisa, look!" Jeremy shouted, pointing toward the lanes. The ball return system clanked loudly as an unseen ball rolled down the track, gradually picking up speed. My pulse quickened, something was definitely wrong. Before I could comprehend it all, the lights blinked out completely. Darkness enveloped us, cutting off any hope of escape. I felt panic swell within as I fumbled for the key in my pocket. "Stay close," I shouted, but my voice sounded thin in the pitch black. Then, I heard it. A whisper, cold and taunting. "You shouldn't have come here." I clutched the key tightly, a shiver running down my spine as the icy air seemed to breathe around us. The child's laughter surrounded us, mingling with desperate cries for help echoing in the void. I could sense the danger tightening around us, ready to strike. "What if that key is the only way out?" I muttered, uncertain but instinctively feeling it was true. But as the laughter intensified, drowning out my thoughts, I knew one thing for certain: we were not alone, and whatever we were dealing with was just getting started. I felt my heart pound in my chest, a steady throb of fear. My fingers tightened around the key, trying to steady myself against the dark. "This isn't funny," I yelled, not knowing who I was yelling at. It felt as if the shadows themselves were listening, taunting me. "Lisa, I can't see anything." Sarah's voice broke through the blackness. "Where are you?" "I'm right here," I shouted back, trying to project calm. The silence stretched and I could feel the laughter fading, only to be replaced by something heavier, something waiting. With trembling hands, I fished out my phone and hit the flashlight. The beam cut through the darkness, revealing Jeremy standing a few feet away, his wide eyes caught somewhere between fear and determination. "We have to stick together," he insisted, though his voice cracked. "Right," I agreed. "First, we need to find an exit." As we moved cautiously, the beam of light danced along the gutted bowling lanes, illuminating the faded murals and peeling paint. Every creak of the floorboards felt amplified, as if the whole building was alive and aware of our every step. Then, abruptly, the laughter returned. Not a child's this time, it sounded darker, more sinister, echoing from the back of the building as if it were coming from the depths of some unseen pit. My heart dropped. "What is that?" I whispered, dread coating my voice. "We need to go. Now," I urged, pushing forward as the flickering light spotlighted a door at the far end of the hall, a potential escape route. I felt a rush of relief, which quickly evaporated when I realized it was covered in rust and may have been locked. Just as I reached for the handle, the door rattled violently, as if something was trying to break through from the other side. A chill swept down my spine. "Please tell me that's just the wind," Sarah murmured, her voice a thread of uncertainty. "It's not," I said, dread pooling in my stomach. "We have to find another way." But before I could turn away, the door slammed open with a force that knocked me back a few steps. I braced myself, and from the inky darkness beyond, something flitted past the threshold. It was a shadow, darting fast, but then it paused. I squinted into the gloom and saw a pair of glowing eyes staring right at me. "Run!" The command escaped my lips before I could think. We turned on our heels and bolted back down the hallway, the laughter roaring back to a fever pitch. It felt almost as though the very walls were closing in on us, every shadow reaching to pull us back. The panic surged as we stumbled back into the main area of the bowling alley, where the air felt thick and heavy. The dim light barely illuminated the lanes, the familiar comfort of the alley now twisted and grotesque. And that laughter? It was joined now by muffled whispers, leading us further down into the abyss. "That hallway is not safe," Jeremy shouted, spotting a window far ahead. "We can break that." I nodded vigorously, my heart racing even more. But just as we took a step toward it, the laughter suddenly fell silent. I felt the oppressive quiet settle in like a shroud, every inch of my skin prickling with dread. That's when I saw it, all three of us huddled under the pale glow of the exit sign, our breaths rapid, the reflection of pale shadows dancing behind us in the glass. We weren't alone. The echoes of the past clung to the corners of the room, watching us. I turned to my friends, confusion swirling in my gut. "What now?" Before anyone could answer, the world tilted as an unmistakable voice came from behind us, chilling me to the bone. "You shouldn't have come here," and in that moment, I knew we were trapped, and the real terror was just beginning. The voice echoed around us, reverberating through the warped space as my heart raced. I turned slowly, my flashlight beam wavering in fear. Shadows writhed like sentient smoke, elongating on the walls. The small exit sign flickered, casting erratic glimmers over the unsettling scene. Who are you?" I demanded, my voice shaking despite my attempt to sound brave. I squinted into the darkness, seeking a face, but the shadows danced too rapidly for me to focus. Suddenly, I felt a pulse of cold air rush past me, sending shivers racing down my spine. Sarah gasped beside me, her voice tremulous. "We should go, Lisa. We need to find a way out," she urged, eyes pleading. "Wait," I said, unable to stop myself from wanting to know more. "What do you want from us?" "Your presence here, it's an invitation," the voice replied, chillingly calm. I searched my friends' faces, wanting to retreat, but something held me there, a mixture of fear and curiosity. Before I could think of an escape plan, Jeremy shouted, "There!" He pointed toward the arcade area on the right, partially illuminated by the blue light of a malfunctioning sign. "That looks like a way to the side exit." At that moment, the laughter erupted again, a chorus of drawn-out whispers laced within. It was close now, a cacophony that felt like it was crawling under my skin. I grabbed Sarah's arm, yanking her toward the arcade, each step feeling heavier, like the floor was trying to weigh us down. We dashed toward the flickering lights, the gripping anxiety numbing the edges of my mind. The old games stood still, faded memories caught in a loop. My phone light danced over their surfaces, illuminating the cracked screens and peeling paint. Then I spotted something that made me stop, my breath hitching in my throat. A reflection in one of the glass screens caught my eye. It wasn't my own. It was a small, pale figure, barely visible. It wore an old bowling shirt, the collar popped, and dark hair falling over its face. It smiled a wide, unsettling grin before disappearing without a sound. "Did you see that?" I gasped, my heart racing faster. There was a kid in there. Jeremy's expression turned grim. "Let us just keep moving. If we don't leave now, I don't know what will happen to us." As we hurried past the rows of machines, the whispers grew louder, drowning out my rational thoughts. "We shouldn't be here." The words echoed in my head, almost mocking me. Then, out of nowhere, the ground trembled beneath us. Tiles cracked, and from the fissures, thick black smoke began to pour, curling and rising like a serpent searching for prey. The laughter transformed into frantic shrieks, breaking through the darkness with a piercing intensity. "We have to get out!" Sarah screamed. But the way we came was blocked by a suddenly solid wall of smoke, threatening to engulf everything. I backed away, my heart racing with the realization that we were about to be swallowed whole. "This way." I pointed to an opening that led deeper into the arcade, away from the chaos. But as we sprinted toward it, I could sense the weight of unseen eyes watching from behind the billowing clouds. I was certain of one thing: this wasn't just a search for an exit anymore. Something in this place wanted us. We plunged into the arcade, desperate, but then I stumbled on something hard, my foot catching as I fell. My flashlight skittered away, the beam darting across the floor. That's when I noticed the metal door, slightly ajar, with a dusty sign on it, "Employees Only," and a chill shot through me. I reached out to grab it, breathless. "What if there's a way out through here?" I urged, trying to ignore the gnawing fear. When my hand touched the door, it swung open smoothly, revealing a dark tunnel that looked as if it went deep beneath the alley. A moan echoed up from the depths, and I turned back to my friends, their faces pale with dread. In that moment, resignation washed over me. I didn't know what waited for us down there, but I felt a pull, a dark calling that was impossible to resist. And just as I took a step forward, I heard that voice again. Welcome to my domain now. I understood the real horror awaited us in the darkness below. I paused at the door, uncertainty clawing at my insides. The weight of the darkness beyond felt alive, like a tangible thing that wanted to drag me down. "We should go back," Sarah whispered, her voice trembling. I understood her fear but also the compulsion to step into the unknown. Jeremy glanced at us, his face steeled with determination. "We can't go back. We need to know what's down there. It's the only way." I nodded, pushing aside the voice in my head that screamed to turn around. I slipped inside the narrow tunnel, the air thick and stale. The walls dripped with moisture, and I tried to keep my breathing steady, but the darkness was suffocating. "Stick close," I murmured, but the shadows seemed to grow longer, creeping toward us. My flashlight flicked on again, illuminating the path that twisted deeper into the bowels of the building. As we moved deeper, the moans rose and fell, and I tried to focus on the sound. It was like an echo of sorrow, lingering in the damp atmosphere. There were flickering lights ahead, and my heart pounded in my chest. Suddenly, the ground beneath us shifted. I looked down just in time to see a cracked section open wider, revealing a void that seemed to pulse with malevolence. "Run!" I shouted, pulling Sarah along as Jeremy urged us forward, his face already set in fear. The lights flickered again, revealing rows of bowling lanes abandoned in time. But they weren't empty. I saw ranks of forgotten figures, their faces pale, their bodies frozen in eternal grief. I froze, stunned. Are those people? It's a trick. It has to be a trick, Jeremy insisted, but the way he trembled suggested he was as uncertain as I was. Ahead, a faint light cut through the murkiness, and we stumbled toward it, desperation fueling our legs. When we reached it, I squinted at the sight. A single bowling ball glowed brightly on the end of a lane, pulsing rhythmically. "That's strange," Sarah said, voice barely above a whisper. When I stepped closer, a wave of dread rushed over me. The ball was inexplicably warm under my touch, almost vivacious, as if it had a heartbeat. Before I could pull away, I felt something tight grip my wrist. I turned quickly, panic surging through me. Behind me, shadows swirled, coalescing into dark forms. They were no longer just shapes, they had started to take on familiar features, the faces of the children I had seen reflected earlier. "Join us," they whispered in unison, their voices echoing in my mind. I jerked back, horror crashing over me. "No. I want." I stumbled, my heart hammering fiercely as the shadows recoiled. But it didn't stop there. The bowling ball rolled off the lane, landing solidly on the floor. With a loud thud, it rolled toward us, as if drawn by some unseen force. I could feel the shadows inching closer, and I knew we had to escape before they could wrap around us. "Move!" I yelled, shoving Sarah and Jeremy ahead of me. We sprinted past the vibrating ball, our breaths coming out in frantic gasps, the figures still watching with those vacant expressions and twisted smiles. As we lurched forward, the light from the exit seemed to flicker in the distance, but each step I took felt heavier, like the shadows were trying to pull me back. I didn't know if we'd reached that exit or if we were running straight into a trap. Just as we approached the dim glow, the laughter erupted again, louder, more mocking. Then I heard it over the laughter, a loud clang followed by a voice, deafening in the silence. "You shouldn't have come here." I spun around just in time to see a rush of shadows converging. A scream erupted from my throat as I pushed Sarah and Jeremy ahead. "Go! Get out!" I took one last look as the shadows stretched toward me, longing to envelop me in darkness. And as I turned back, the space began to swirl, dimming with the growing shadows, and my heart raced with dread. Would we make it out alive? Because I couldn't shake the thought the shadows were just beginning to awaken. I sprinted toward the flickering light, adrenaline pumping through my veins. My heart felt like it was about to burst. I grabbed Sarah and Jeremy's wrists, pulling them along with me. "Keep going. Don't look back." The laughter echoed behind us, thick and unsettling. It twisted in my ears, slicing through the air. I could feel the shadows gaining ground, their whispers merging into a chaotic symphony of despair. I didn't dare to glance over my shoulder, but the noise only fueled my panic. Suddenly, the ground shifted again beneath my feet. I stumbled, trying to keep my balance. "No. Not now." My words came out frantic. Just as I regained my footing, the light ahead expanded, illuminating what looked like a concession stand, a dark, eerie version of what I remembered from happier times. "Where are we?" Jeremy gasped, glancing back, his face pale and covered in sweat. "I don't know, but we have to move," I said, urgency drowning my nerves. As we reached the stand, a cold wind swept through, causing the lights to flicker even more erratically. I squeezed through the narrow space beneath a flickering neon sign that read "Closed." Once on the other side, I turned to check on my friends. But they were not behind me. When I called out their names, only silence answered. "Sarah? Jeremy?" I stepped back, panic welling up. An unsettling stillness filled the air. It felt wrong. I took a deep breath and dared to look around. That's when I saw it. A shadow at the far end of the stand, darker than the rest. It moved, shifting like smoke, and before I knew what was happening, it lunged at me. No! I flinched, nearly losing my balance as I sidestepped. The entity stopped short, hovering in the dim light, its form getting sharper. It looked almost human, its face twisted into a grotesque mask of despair. "Why do you run?" It rasped, its voice hollow and echoing. "You cannot escape your fate." I stumbled backward, swallowing the surge of fear that threatened to choke me. "Get away from me." The shadow seemed to shrink momentarily, then expanded toward me like a dark wave. I forced myself to think, and that's when I remembered the bowling ball. It hadn't been just a ball, it was a beacon of some kind. I had to get back to it. Clenching my fists, I turned to run back toward the lanes. The air thickened, and the laughter returned, rising with my fears. I dashed through the gap, but as I crossed back into the main area, I felt a sharp pull. Something tugged at my clothes, dragging me down. I stumbled, fighting against the pressure, and a voice echoed in my mind, mingling with the laughter. "Join us." "No. I won't." I roared, fighting against the invisible grip. I pushed myself forward until I reached the lane where the bowling ball had been. But to my dread, it was gone. "What? Where did it go?" I gasped, scanning the lane. My heart sank further when I noticed a shadow melting into the cracks of the floor. That's when I felt a hand on my shoulder. "Sarah?" I gasped, turning slowly. But it wasn't her. Another figure rose from the depths, a child, hollow and spectral. Its eyes stared blankly as if searching for something lost. "Help us," it whispered, and that was the moment the darkness exploded around me, flooding my senses. My mind raced. What did it want? Just then, I heard a familiar voice break through the chaos. "Let her go." It was Jeremy. I turned, relief flooding over me, but as I did, shadows flickered, reaching out toward him. The child's voice layered with the mockery of laughter, forming a spiral of despair around us. "Can we really escape?" I thought, dread pooling in my stomach. Someone had to have the answers. But as the laughter crescendoed, any hope of clarity slid deeper into the abyss. Desperation clawed at me. Either I fight, or I find myself lost in the darkness forever. Time felt distorted, each second stretching and warping around me. The shadows cast by the swirling darkness enveloped my vision, threatening to consume everything in their path. Jeremy's voice, fierce and protective, snapped my attention as he plunged forward. "We need to get to the lane." The ball was glowing. He yelled, his eyes darting to where the glowing orb had been moments before. But the laughter swelled again, drowning out my thoughts, and I felt panic seep into my bones. "But it's gone!" I screamed, struggling against the grasping tendrils of darkness that seemed to pulse around me. "Look out!" Sarah's voice sliced through the heavy air. I turned just in time to see another shadow darting toward me, elongated fingers stretching hungrily through the air. In that moment, something snapped inside me. I wouldn't let them pull me under. I charged forward, pushing through the miasma encircling me. I had to keep running, keep believing there had to be a way out. I could see Jeremy scrambling past the lanes, arms outstretched as if he were trying to catch whatever flickered just out of reach. Then a flicker of light caught my eye, flickering like a heartbeat. It pulsed gently at the end of the lane, the bowling ball. Somehow, it had returned, glowing brighter than before, summoning me to it. "Let us go!" I shouted, my breath coming in ragged gasps. I pushed past shadows that whispered promises of despair, forcing my legs to move faster. The laughter didn't relent, it crescendoed, a grotesque chorus mingling with echoes of children's voices, and I could feel the darkness reaching for me. A coldness wrapped around my ankles as I finally reached the ball. Heart racing, I snatched it from the lane, its warmth melting against my hands as if it were alive. I turned back to see Jeremy and Sarah struggling against unfurling shadows that swiped at them like angry claws. "Grab it," I urged, pointing at the ball, and they nodded in unison, racing towards me. The shadows writhed, swirling furiously as I held the glowing orb aloft, feeling its energy pulsate. "What do we do?" Sarah shouted over the torrential chaos, but her eyes held a flicker of hope. "Maybe it's a way out," I replied. The ball seemed to respond to my desperation, brighter now, shining like a beacon against the oppressive dark. We huddled together, arms linked, and with a nod, we hurled the ball down the lane. It rolled, and with unexpected speed, it struck the pins, causing an explosion of light that lit up the bowling alley. The laughter ceased, silence enveloping us in a cocoon of calm for just a heartbeat. As the brightness intensified, shadows recoiled, shrinking against the encroaching light. With a magnificent crack, the air pulsed around us as the ground trembled, the very fabric of the darkness tearing apart. I felt my heart lift. Freedom was within reach. But just as suddenly as the brightness surged, the light began to flicker like dying embers. I grabbed Jeremy and Sarah tightly, pulling them closer as the darkness roiled again, swirling up toward us, yearning to reclaim its territory. "Keep holding on," I shouted, feeling a surge of energy spiraling through us, weaving our desperation and fear together. But as I watched the space bend, I realized we weren't entirely free yet. Not until we faced whatever had lurked in the shadows. We held the power of the mysterious bowling ball together, and I sensed it resonating beyond its physical shape like a doorway to something deeper, something that wished to be understood rather than feared. "What do you want from us?" I called out, my voice trembling yet firm. That's when I saw it, the pale figure of the child emerging from spears of light that splintered the darkness. A soft, sad smile graced his face, but there was no malice, just an ancient sadness etched into his features, a longing that transcended age. "He wants us to know," Jeremy murmured, awe washing over his expression. "He just wants to be remembered." But before I could comprehend, waves of shadows convulsed around us, the voices rising again in a frantic plea. "You shouldn't have come here. You shouldn't have left us." The words turned into a chorus of cries, pooling with a deep sorrow. Somewhere within the chaos, I felt the key in my pocket grow colder, a reminder of why we had come, a piece of the moment that had forced us here. "We need to remember them," I shouted, not just to my friends but to the shadows that clung around us, thirsty for recognition. "This place, it's not just a bowling alley. It's what they left behind." We stepped forward together, the ball's light illuminating our path as we began to form words, names, laughter, love, and the joy of moments lost. As we spoke, I watched shadows loosen, pause in the grip of their own sorrow before fading into the air like smoke. The warmth of the ball enveloped us, bathing the space in radiant light until the last echoes of laughter fell silent. And then, just like that, we were alone. Panting, we stood amidst the remnants of the bowling alley, still and quiet, the unsettling weight finally lifted. The air felt lighter, released from its own binding. I glanced at Jeremy and Sarah, their faces mirroring my own mixture of confusion and resolve. Where were my parents? What had happened to the alley, the children trapped within? I still felt echoing whispers clawing at the edges of my mind. Had we truly released them, or had we merely quelled the darkness for a moment? Those unanswered questions would linger, but I was grateful to be free, to walk out into the night, carrying the memory of the children, a weight I would bear, a reminder that dark places hold stories worth telling. As we stepped outside into the cool night air, it felt different, charged with unspoken promise. And even if I would never return to that alley, I could still hear their laughter in my heart, a soft chorus that urged me to remember. I moved forward, leaving the haunted place behind me, aware that some mysteries might never be fully unraveled, but that didn't mean they weren't worth honoring. I couldn't forget. I wouldn't let them fade into shadows again.